or news on demand at KGAB.com.
And before I let you go, Doug, Leanne, you were sitting here talking basketball and all of that kind of stuff with Doug over here. Just a thought, don't encourage him. Because that's like asking me about, like, these Marvel movies are coming out. I'll talk your ear off, you'll never be able to get rid of them. With that note, Doug, get out. 8:09's the time, and it's a whole 33 degrees and humid out there. And the lady I'm talking to, who I called Leanne, is Leanne Manlove, who is running for Laramie County District Attorney. Is it nice out there this morning? Because it just seemed, humid to me is good. I grew up in Florida.
Well, good morning, Glenn. Thanks for having me on.
Sure.
Yeah, there's no wind. Okay. I don't want to say the word out loud.
No, you can't, because that encourages the wind then to jump in there.
Yeah, so I think it's beautiful. It's
Okay,
sunny
good.
and
Nice spring, because north of us got a whole pile of snow.
I
All
heard
right.
that.
District Attorney, before we get into all of the questions I have for you, first off, let's hear your resume. You are from where? Let's start from the beginning here.
Well,
I don't mean like birth,
okay.
but okay.
So actually being back in this building is kind of fun for me. My dad had his law practice in this building. So I remember coming here when I was a little girl. I'm a Cheyenne kid. Grew up here, went to school in Cheyenne. Then I went over the hill, went to school in Laramie, got my undergrad there. Got married to a Cheyenne boy, and we ended up living in, of all places, Hawaii.
Wow. Okay.
He got a teaching job there. So we lived there for a couple years, and then when I went back to law school in Laramie, we moved back and been here ever since.
Okay. Now, if you're running for a district attorney, let's take a good look at what that job entails and why you're attracted to that job.
You know, the job is really being the top law enforcement officer in the community. The buck stops with you when you're in that position. I worked in the DA's office for 5 years, and although sometimes it's discouraging to see what one person would do to another, I really enjoyed the job.
Okay.
I loved it. You know, it might sound a little bit Pollyannish, but when I would go home at the end of the day, I would feel like, you know, what I did made my place where I live better.
Okay.
And that matters to me. So that's one of the things that attracts me to the job.
Is there a burnout rate with something like, because I know some jobs, especially when I talk to social workers, they got in it for all the right reasons, but after a period of time, they just burned out and they got to go do something else.
You know, I think that is a risk. For me, I never encountered that because I have such a great support system on the other side. I have a terrific husband and amazing kids who love to play sports.
Okay.
So for me, the burnout was never a factor, but it sure can be, because being exposed to that kind of ugliness as your regular part of your job, I think it can wear on a person.
Where does, besides being able to be tough enough to handle that, you got to be tough enough just to do the job and put up with some of the people you have to put up with, frankly. Where does that toughness come from?
For me? Well, I think part of it comes from, you know, you can't be a shrinking violet and live in Wyoming and love it.
No way.
You can't be a soccer mom here and not be tough. So for me, it's just a part of my DNA. I'm the Fighting Irish. Those are my people.
Yeah.
And I love a good competition.
Okay.
And in some ways, that's what it is. It's an adversarial system. And if you enjoy that, if you thrive on it, it's a great job for you. If you don't, then, you know, you don't want to be a trial lawyer.
Okay. Leanne Manlove is my guest. She's running for Laramie County District Attorney.
Yes, sir.
That right. Okay. Now, what do you think are any things that need to be changed or improved at the district attorney's office? In other words, would you go in with a plan?
Yes, sir. I would really like to see stability return to that office. There's some chaos.
What's unstable? What's the chaos?
You know, there's been a lot of turnover within the attorneys, and I don't know the reasons for that. I'm not in that office, but there's been a lot of turnover just within the prosecutorial staff. I'd like to see a higher success rate for the prosecutors. Your job is to hold people accountable. And I don't see that happening the way that I think it should be.
Okay. So then, to achieve that, is there a strategy that you've already laid out? There's plans that you have to achieve those goals?
There is. And I appreciate you asking the question, because I think that's really important to voters. one of the very first things I would do is I would hold myself to the highest standard. I don't think that in a small office like that you can be just a manager or just a politician. You have to be a prosecutor. You've got to try cases, and you have to do a good job with that.
So you're not the general who's going to sit behind his desk telling the troops what to do. You would actually be out there working cases yourself.
Correct. Especially the really hard cases. And those are child sex abuse cases, adult sexual assault, the real violent felonies, homicides, obviously, aggravated assault, burglaries, robberies.
Right.
And you're the elected. That is what people have sent you there to do. And that's what I would do if I were in that office.
What really, and this is probably the toughest question I think of the morning, attracted you to this kind of a job? Because, I mean, look, I look at it and I think that I just have a good time every single day doing what I do here. So there's got to be something that's made you say, I want to do this job, even though I have to deal with an endless parade of human debris every single day.
Well, and I don't want to be critical of you, Glenn, since you're my host, but I want to be sure, too, that we don't demonize people who are on the other side of the V, state versus Leanne Manlove, Glenn Woods. So human debris, I'm going to maybe rephrase that a little.
Okay, go ahead. I'm a talk host. I can say stuff like that.
You can. Yeah. Part of what I've been doing since I left the district attorney's office is private practice. So I have clients, and I practice criminal law, and I really care about my clients. And that's something that I would take with me into the DA's office. But in terms of what attracted me to that, why did I didn't know anything about prosecution when I started. I had some terrific mentors, people who are now on the bench, Judge Leigh here in Cheyenne, Judge Jones in Sweetwater County. And those folks really taught me the craft of prosecution. And if it's something you do well, if it's something where you're working for the right ends, you can achieve a good outcome.
Okay.
And to me, that's noble. And
so
that really appeals
ends.
to me.
Okay.
Yes.
Someone's got to step up and do the hard job. Grab your headphones real quick here. We got someone sitting on hold, and of course your questions are allowed. 632-6500 for Leanne. This is Glenn, who's on the phone.
Yes, this is Eric in Cheyenne.
Yes, sir.
I'll ask my question and then hang up. Can I get the candidate's stance on recreational marijuana prosecution, and if anything would change under you, and if you support decriminalizing small amounts of marijuana here in Cheyenne? Thank you.
Eric, thanks for the question. And it's important. Obviously, our legislature has been struggling with possible marijuana reform for the past couple of years. I will tell you that I don't support decriminalization of small amounts of marijuana, because that's not what the law is. And in the role of district attorney, you're not making law. And I would never support a DA who said, my job as DA is to make law. No, it isn't. You're in the executive branch, not legislative. So as the district attorney, I would follow the law. And the law in Wyoming is that the possession, use of marijuana is not legal. So if the law were to change, I would, of course, follow the law. But personally, I don't support the decriminalization of marijuana because it's against federal law as well. So I think that there are obviously prosecutorial discretion standards that can come into play. Do I think people who are using recreational marijuana are the scourge of society and need to rot in jail? Absolutely not. We have much bigger issues in Cheyenne that I would focus on.
If you have any questions for Leanne Manlove, who's running for Laramie County District Attorney, phone number 632-6500. More in a moment. AM 650 KGAB Radio.
Back to KGAB's Wyoming Wake Up with Glenn Woods on AM 650 KGAB.
8:20 is the time. It's a whole 33 degrees. There's actually some sun peeking through there, Lee. Starting to look pretty good. I get up this morning and it is cloudy and humid, and being an island boy from Florida, that actually felt normal to me, other than the dry weather that we have year-round. So Leanne Manlove is running for Laramie County District Attorney. She's here with me in the studio, and if you have any questions for her, 632-6500 is the phone number. Grab your headphones again, because got some more calls coming in.
Great.
This is Glenn, who's on the phone.
Oh, this is Jim. I got a question for the candidate.
Okay.
I've been reading social media with something about misconduct. McGinn case, and I just wondered, how can she run for elected position if there is misconduct in her past? And I'll hang up and listen.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that call, and I'm happy to answer the question. I'd like to answer it in detail if my host
You go right ahead. The microphone's yours.
So, yes, there's been a little bit of criticism on social media. I think it's really important when we talk about this to give people the context of the case that's being referred to. It's State versus John McGinn. It was a domestic violence child abuse case here in Laramie County. I prosecuted Mr. McGinn. He was convicted at jury trial for a felony. It's possession of a deadly weapon with intent. And he appealed his conviction to the Wyoming Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said that I had asked impermissible, improper questions on cross-examination when Mr. McGinn testified. And the questions were along this line. His daughter testified. She was in the home during this argument where there was a firearm used. And she said, ABC happened. And then when Mr. McGinn testified, he said, no, that's not what happened. It was XYZ. So my question to Mr. McGinn, the line of questions I asked that were impermissible was, when your daughter said A, B, and C happened, was she lying? And the Supreme Court said that's not allowed. And so they reversed the conviction and returned that to the district attorney's office. I left the DA's office in September of 2015. Mr. McGinn's decision was issued by the Supreme Court in November of 2015. So that's the context of the McGinn case. But I appreciate the question from the caller because I think it illustrates three really important issues in what I see as the district attorney's job. And those are sound judgment, careful conviction, and integrity. So sound judgment, I failed. In the McGinn case, I failed to use sound judgment as a prosecutor. I asked questions I should not have asked. And the Supreme Court let me know. But I learned from that, and it's not made me bitter. It's helped me to be a better lawyer. And in terms of careful conviction, it's not just winning, but it's also standing by your convictions. What is it that you believe in? And a core belief of mine is that the prosecutor, on behalf of the people of the state of Wyoming, stands up for what's right. So in this particular case, I stood up for a battered woman and her child. I didn't do it the right way. And there was an opportunity to fix that. And that's where integrity comes into play, because when the case was sent back to the district attorney's office, I was no longer there. If I had been, I would have retried that case because there was a lot of evidence.
Okay. So now, this to me has always been, when I take a look at lawyers in general, defense, prosecution, doesn't matter. There's times that you will look at it and think, oh, I've got to defend this guy. Oh, please. And there's other times, as a prosecutor, you must think, I really have to prosecute this guy? Now, you got to do your job, but on the other hand, how hard is that to step up and say, I'm going to go ahead and prosecute this guy? And, maybe he's not the bad guy here. What do you do?
I don't believe in those labels, good guy, bad guy.
Okay.
I think it's really, really important that whoever is prosecuting,
sure,
it's not personal.
Okay.
You're doing your job. You do it to the best of your ability. Okay. And not surprisingly, some people won't like that.
Does that cause some sleepless nights on occasion?
It would if I wasn't a Second Amendment fan.
Okay.
But I'm a concealed carry girl,
Okay.
So I sleep just fine at night.
Okay, one more call here. This is Glenn, who's on the phone.
Just a resident human debris.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Okay, I was wondering where you were going with that.
I got a question.
All right.
I don't know. Did you work under Homar's regime or?
Yes, I worked under District Attorney Scott Homar for 4 years.
My question was, and we had mentioned this during the commercial break, people who were influential to us, people who inspired us and were influential. And I can name some people in this business that really helped me along early on, even inspired me to get into the business in the first place, because I was a kid laying in bed at night in Florida listening to Larry King on the radio when I was growing up. Who inspired you and who mentored you?
Who inspired me to become a lawyer was my dad.
Okay.
He's a lawyer. He was a judge here for over 20 years. And of course, I love him. But more than that, I respect him. So he was my inspiration. My mentors were some fantastic trial lawyers, and not just in the prosecutor's office. One of the people I most respect is Diane Lozano, and she's the chief public defender for the state of Wyoming. She's fantastic.
Leigh Manlove is my guest. She's running for Laramie County District Attorney. This is Glenn, who's on the phone with us.
Hi, this is Dale.
Yes, sir.
I have a question or two, actually. In the beginning of the broadcast, she had mentioned that she would be the one to prosecute the major cases, the murders, the child sex offenders, rape, burglaries, aggravated robberies, that type of stuff. So my question is twofold. One, if she's going to be prosecuting everything major, why do you need a staff? Number two, if you have a staff that's not competent enough to prosecute those cases, why would you have them on staff? And three, that goes along with, if you're not going to let them do their job, then that's going to create a management problem where you're going to have the same problem that is there now, where people come and go all the time, and you cannot keep someone at your office like you're trying to do. So I'll hang up and listen to what you got to say.
Thanks. That's a great question. So I like to equate this to the notion that if you're the general, all you do is sit behind the desk. And make decisions. You're not ready to take on the fight yourself. And I firmly believe that if you want to know what's going on in your own office, if you want to know what's going on in the courts, you got to be in there. You got to be engaging with the public. Otherwise, you become so far removed that you're out of touch. And this is a small office. There are currently 12 attorneys. And to say, well, one of them shouldn't be prosecuting, that is a disservice to the taxpayer. So this is a general fund appropriation through the state, the district attorney's office. It's a $4.2 million budget. 3.8 is on personnel. So in my opinion, if the public is trusting me to do that job, that's every part of it. That's the administration, the supervision, going to the legislature asking for funding, that's being in the community, understanding what's going on, and it's trying cases.
Okay. Now, of course, as we get into, we got a whole year for you to start running for office here, and people are going to want to ask you a lot more questions than just this. So first off, are you appearing anywhere? Are you talking to anyone?
Yes. And I think that's really by virtue of the fact that I've been appearing and talking to people for the last 47 years.
You
that's
wear
how
out
old
your
I am.
shoes.
Yeah. You know, but I intend to go door to door. I really hope I get a chance to talk to people and engage and hear what their concerns are. That it may not be the same as mine. You know, clearly Eric and I have a different view on recreational marijuana use. But you know, mentoring other lawyers in the office means that you require them to go to court. You sit there with them. You make sure that they are doing things appropriately. And, you know, that's one of the things that I hear criticism right now is that, boy, there's just really not the lawyering that we would expect to see going on in that office.
There would be. Where do people follow you? Have you put up a website, social media?
Thank you, Glenn. Yes, LA4DA.com. LA4DA.com is the campaign website.
That's very simple.
That's
easy to do. Did you put up a Facebook page too?
I do. I have a personal Facebook page, Leigh Manlove, and Manlove for District Attorney is the campaign website. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram.
Okay. So if people want to get a hold of you during the next full election cycle, this is going to wear you out, trust me, then that's a good way to do it. Give me that email or the website address again, please.
LA4DA.com.
Okay. Thank you for coming in.
LA4DA.com.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.